everyone, it is Lindsay and it has been quite a while since I have made a video. I did a life update maybe a few months ago and I said that I was pregnant and I finally have given birth. So I have just been really busy. The last month of my pregnancy I was just feeling awful, and then I have just been busy with the baby. I finally have time to sit down and make a video for you guys, and I really wanted to share with you guys my labor and delivery experience. When I was pregnant, I was really scared and anxious to give birth. I think most, if not all, women are scared of giving birth because I feel like when you're a woman growing up, you have always heard that giving birth is like one of the most, probably if not the most painful thing you will ever go through, and that's kind of scary if you want to have your own kids, knowing that you're just going to be going through the most painful thing but you just don't know what it's going to feel like. One of the things that helped me kind of get over that fear was watching a lot of labor and delivery vlogs and videos just talking about it. So I'm hoping that my experience will be helpful for you guys in some way. If you guys are interested in this video, then just keep on watching. So I went into early labor the night of Sunday, November 25th. It was about 9 o'clock when I went into the bathroom and I noticed that there were drops of fresh red blood. They tell you to go to the hospital if you are about 3 to 5 minutes apart contracting, or if your water breaks, if you are bleeding like you are having a period, or if you haven't felt the baby move for a really long time. So I figured that I was probably in early labor, but I called my doctor and she said that I am in early labor. We are trying to decide if I should go to the hospital because normally she wouldn't have me go to the hospital. It was blizzarding outside, which of course my baby would want to come on a blizzard. She thought it might be better if I go to the hospital right now rather than have my labor progress and we would have to drive to the hospital when I was in way more pain. So she thought it'd be safer to go to the hospital now. I was also contracting, but my contractions were just all over the place. During my 3rd trimester, I had a lot of Braxton Hicks, but they weren't as frequent, so I didn't really time them as much. Right then and there, I would say I was contracting more than usual, but it wasn't 3 to 5 minutes apart. They were still kind of all over the place, but they were just more than usual, if that makes sense. We had to pack our bags and I had to pack the rest of my bag. I did have my bag half packed ahead of time, but I just had to get the toiletries. My husband had to get his bag packed. He did not have anything packed at all. And we also had to get my dog's bag because we had to drive my dog to my parents' house because they were going to be watching him while we were in the hospital. It was a really stressful car ride going to my parents. My parents live about 40 minutes away from us, and then the hospital is about 20 minutes away from them. So my parents are on the way to the hospital. So that was the most stressful car ride ever because we were driving in the slushy snow. But we got to my parents and it was about 11 o'clock at this point. And we decided to try and wait it out until the storm gets a little bit better. And we tried to sleep it off. My parents and my husband tried going to sleep, and then I tried going to sleep, but I was by myself in the family room on the couch, and it was just really painful trying to go to sleep. I would doze off here and there, but I felt like every hour I would have a really intense contraction and I would just run to the bathroom. Best way that I can describe what contractions feel like are just menstrual cramps, probably a little bit more painful than that. I feel like women have told me that they feel like menstrual cramps times a million, and I wouldn't say that at that point, but they did feel just like my normal menstrual cramps, which are pretty painful as it is, but they were just kind of in waves. They're just in and out. And there were some that were way more painful than others. Sorry, this is a TMI, but like I said, I would go to the bathroom about every hour because for some reason, one of the things that would kind of comfort me when I had a really bad contraction was just going to the bathroom. I don't know why. It didn't make the It didn't take the pain away, but it did kind of help comfort me in some way, because the toilet seat was cold and it was really nice to sit on a cold toilet seat. This is something I didn't really expect that would happen, but I guess this is really common. I did have a lot of bowel movements every time I would run to the bathroom, and I looked it up to see if that was normal while you're in labor, and people said it was, just because like you're using the same muscles to pass a bowel movement as you would to push a baby. So I guess it's just really normal to go to the bathroom. So if that happens to you guys, just know that's common. At about 5 o'clock in the morning was when I just really couldn't take it anymore. I had been timing my contractions throughout that whole night, and they were about 5 to 8 minutes apart at around 5 in the morning. I did notice that I was starting to bleed a little bit more. It still wasn't like a heavy period amount of blood, but it was still increasing. I called my doctor and she was like, yeah, you need to go to the hospital like now. I woke up my parents and my husband, and my parents actually drove us to the hospital, and it was about 7 o'clock when we got there. Right away, I got checked to see how dilated I was, and for the amount of pain that I was in, I thought I was about like 6 centimeters dilated, and I was actually only 4, which was already painful enough. And I asked if I can get an epidural. And also, really quickly, just one tip about labor and delivery is to keep an open mind, because anything can really happen. I think it would help like alleviate the stress a little bit during that process if you just be flexible and have an open mind, because like I said, anything can happen. And for me, I was just hoping for a really smooth delivery, but there were some complications here and there. They weren't too big of complications, but they were still some. First complication was getting my epidural, which I have always planned on getting my epidural when I was pregnant, and the anesthesiologist had a really tough time placing the epidural. I'm a really small person. I am like 4'11", so I'm pretty petite, and he had a really tough time finding the spot on my spine to place the epidural in there. He had to do it like 4 times. No joke. It was literally 4 times, which is a really pain in the butt to get the epidural in the first place, I feel like. The way that I would describe getting an epidural is that you are contracting, you're in so much pain, you have to be still and hunch over. You're already so huge, so like hunching over is just really uncomfortable. They first had to numb the area, so he put in a little shot, which just felt like a tiny pinch. He had to place the epidural needle in there, or IV or whatever in there, and that, I can't really remember if that was super painful. I think it just felt like another pinch, but you can just kind of feel them like tugging it in there, which it was just like uncomfortable. He had to do that, well, he did it 3 times, and then he called another anesthesiologist to come in. He placed the epidural in the correct spot, but he hit a nerve where it sent down an electric shock down all the way to my toes on my left leg, which caught me by surprise. I did kind of cry out a little bit, and it was kind of painful, but right immediately after that, I just went numb from the bottom down. Like, I could not move at all, and it was a really weird feeling. My legs felt so heavy and I couldn't move at all, so it was just crazy. As I was numb, I couldn't feel the contractions anymore. I was not in pain, which was really nice. They did place the catheter in, which I could feel them placing, but it didn't really hurt. I don't know if it generally hurts to place a catheter in. They also broke my water, which they took kind of like a long needle, and it was just really quick. They did like a quick poke, and I felt like I just peed myself a little bit. That's kind of just what it felt like, and I got to sleep for about a couple hours. Also, when you get an epidural, there was like a button that I can press so I can get more epidural if I started to get in more pain. So about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because they broke my water at about 11, I think. At about 1 o'clock was when I started to notice throbbing down there. I started feeling pretty painful throbbing, and I tried administering more epidural and it just wasn't helping at all. For some reason I thought it was the catheter because it felt like it was the area of the catheter. I thought it was just like placed wrong and I could feel it. So I told the nurse and she like readjusted it and it was still more painful. I figured that it was my contraction starting to get way more intense and I can start feeling it, and the epidural was like starting to wear off. All of a sudden I had a really huge urge to poop, and I figured that was probably the baby trying to come out. I told my nurse that I have to poop so bad. I think this baby is trying to come out, and she's like, okay, like we'll check you. And they checked and I was good to go, which was kind of terrifying for like a split second, but I was also just wanting this to be over. It was about 2 hours total that I was pushing, and I would say about an hour and a half of that I could not feel anything really, aside from the contractions that still were painful because I think the epidural was starting to wear off. I couldn't really feel anything in regards of like how the baby was coming out. I was using the same muscles that I was to poop. That's what I was using to push the baby, and I couldn't feel anything. I did notice that when the baby was starting to come out a little bit, it didn't really hurt. It felt like when you go to the OBGYN just for like a normal checkup and they use that tool to like put inside to get like a better view, it kind of felt like that feeling. It wasn't painful, it was just uncomfortable. That was when the baby was starting to come out, when the baby's head was actually coming out. And I'm going to describe what it feels like a baby coming out the best way that I can. I'm so sorry if this is like super gross and TMI, but I'm trying to give you as much detail as I can without being too graphic. When the baby's head was starting to come out, it did start to hurt pretty badly. It felt like there was tearing, but what made it pretty painful was that you can feel the pain of the head coming out, but you also had to push when you were contracting. You would have to wait while you have the baby coming out, and it was just painful. So to me, that was the more painful part, was just kind of like sitting there and waiting until you had to push. I would say pushing actually helped with the pain because you're kind of like doing work to take your mind off the pain, and you know that when you're pushing, it's just one step closer to your baby coming out. So pushing kind of helped. So when the head was actually coming out, that was starting to hurt. And for me, the most painful part of the whole labor and delivery process was honestly when the body was coming out. The way that I could describe that was if you are having a really painful bowel movement in general. I'm sure we've all had those. I've definitely had those. It kind of feels like that, but more painful, and it's kind of like that pain is all over down there. It was, I hope that makes sense, but it pretty much, it was really painful. But the thing about that was that felt like it was just 10 seconds or less. It happened so quickly, and I didn't even know that was like the body coming out. I just know that I felt definite tearing down there. I thought the tearing was really bad. When the doctor checked, she said it was actually only just like 1st degree tear. I just felt like there was pretty painful tearing down there, and then my baby was out and she was born. It happened so quickly. My mom and my husband, my mom was in the room with us, but they went and checked on the baby, and they had to press down to get the placenta out, which wasn't painful. It just kind of felt like passing a blood clot, but they pretty much just like pressed down on my abdomen and then it just came out. When I was getting stitches, I could feel that, but it wasn't painful. It just kind of felt like tiny pinches. I mean, at that point, I just had the mindset before going into labor and after labor was that before going into labor, you're gonna give birth. All the other painful stuff leading up to like having the baby come out of you shouldn't be that bad. Like I had that mindset of getting an epidural that kind of terrified me, but I'm like, you're gonna give birth, like you can handle this. Or like contractions, same thing. It's like, you're gonna give birth, you can handle this. And then after I given birth, after they're like pressing down my abdomen, or if they were like giving me stitches, I'm like, you just gave birth, like this isn't as bad. That was kind of like my whole mindset when I approached pain in general during that time. That was pretty much my whole labor and delivery story. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and I will talk to you all later. Bye everyone.